Hello and welcome to another episode of Biker Stories with Bike and Biker. This is Arjun. I have Rakesh and Areeb with me from the team. Today we're talking to Leon and Linda. They're a prolific biker couple who've been riding for a few years now. Adventure junkies as they are, they get out of town as soon as they get a chance. Leon has just started his YouTube channel about his rides and his adventures as well. Interestingly, his Instagram profile says he likes trees. I don't know why he says that, but we'll talk more about that. We'll talk a little bit more about their bikes, their rides, and their adventures. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us, guys.
What she said.
So, what have you guys been busy with for the last few days? A couple of months of lockdown and then opening up. I know, Leon, you've been riding a lot within the city due to the job that you have as well. But Linda, what have you been busy with?
Well, I have a job which allows me to work from home. So I'm grateful for that. And on weekends, what I do is my mom stays around 6 kilometers from where I stay. Sorry, where we stay. So sorry, I stay with. So I go visit her. I have lunch and I come back. So pretty much, I think last 1 month it's been the same.
So tell us about how you've been riding during the lockdown, why you've been riding during the lockdown.
My job is part of essential services, so I work in a company that is part of the whole cloud kitchen setup. So we run our own kitchens and stuff. So we need to go to our kitchens to make sure that everything is working in order. And due to the current crisis, the safety levels have been upped internally massively, actually. So just to make sure that there is no breakages in that. That was one of the reasons why we had to move around. And also, the rest of the business has to continue functioning. So you need to see, your people as regularly as you possibly could. Of course, social distancing, all of that was maintained, and, people were following like a roster system and stuff. But it had to be done.
So basically, you were one of the lucky ones who rode during the lockdown and found empty roads. So how was that experience? I think you put that on your YouTube channel.
Yeah, I did. It was interesting. I mean, the roads were free, so you could, let's say, maintain
Triple digits.
Yeah. And it was just very odd, to be honest, for at least the first 2-3 weeks until you got used to it, to see Bangalore so empty, because everybody genuinely stayed at home and did not really break the curfew. So that was pretty cool. Of course, you will have the odd morons who are out there, but it was unreal. I still don't know what to say, because it was good from a biking sense. The road is free, there are no weird riders, drivers, etc. on the road. And the only people that you constantly keep interacting with are the cops, because they were all over the place checking if you have a pass, why are you out, and stuff like that. But apart from that, it was just empty, man. I mean, say you start from home, any part of Bangalore, you would reach in 30 minutes or under, be it Hebal or Kanakpura, wherever. It was never far anymore. So, that was the only big plus.
So what did you do, Linda? Did you ride?
Just the weekend, Saturdays, to my mom's place. And that was the...
But that you said for the last 1 month, right? That's after pretty much the lockdown started opening up in Bangalore. What were you doing during the lockdown? You were locked down yourself?
Groceries.
That 5-minute ride was my break from my work.
So this is a question to both of you guys. Where did it all start for you? Your motorcycle journey, how it all began?
So for me, the whole thing of riding bikes started with my dad. So I very clearly remember he used to ride a 350 Bullet Enfield. So when I was in 9th standard, so I asked him, can you teach me how to ride? He said, great. I'm waiting for you to ask for it. So he took me to this empty ground. and he told me the first thing that you need to learn is how to push a bike. I said, no, I want to ride. He said, no, first thing you learn is how to push the bike. In case it breaks down, you need to push the bike. Are you up for it? I said, yeah, I'm up for it. So he made me push the bike. I went halfway across the field. He said, let's go home. When you're ready, we'll move from here. So then he got me a Kinetic, like I think the third hand Kinetic, a broken piece one, till start riding this, get balance, get your balance ready, all that. Then in, I think first PU, I got a proper Activa, got my license. And then when I got my job, I first bought my Activa. I got an Activa for myself from my first salary. And then I learned how to drive the car. So I always had this pattern of it was a bucket list to first cross off and buy a car with my first salary. So I got the money, and I mean, once I started growing in my career, I got the money, bought my first car. Drove it, had the car for like 1.5 years, took it out hardly, I think 20 times. That's it. And I knew the car was not for me. I was never a car person. So I think 4 years ago. So then again.
What else happened 4 years ago?
Yeah, Leon happened.
Okay.
It wasn't all good then.
Well, jury is still out.
Perspective.
Potato.
So Anto is one of our very close friends, Anto and Leon. I spoke to Anto as well. He said, why don't you try? We see you ride your Activa. We see that you have clear road sense of how to ride your vehicle. Why don't you try a geared bike? So to be honest, at that point of time, I felt a little like I was holding back, and because all of these guys were going on rides and I was stuck with my Activa. So it was a mental thing that I need to overcome, and I wanted to ride the bike so I can join the rides with them. So I went and asked my dad, I'm ready. Let's give this one more try. So he had sold his Enfield by the time, and I think he had a Charisma. I think he had a Charisma. Now he sold again. He bought a Bullet. So that's a different story. So he took me out for this. Took me on this field, and he actually taught me to ride the bike. I think we started in the morning around 8 o'clock. By around 12 o'clock, I was able to ride the bike without his help, without him guiding me. So I knew that I had the gear shifting on point and the balance on point. They said, you're ready. Let's give you a bigger bike and see how you'll handle it. So I took my friend's bike, which did not have a brake. So he had a...
Which did not have a brake.
an Enfield 350 without brakes. So I said, okay, it's now or never. So I just took the bike. He said he's fixed the bike, but he hadn't fixed the brakes. He had fixed the brakes. So luckily it was an open field. So I took the bike and I actually went 3 rounds, and I said that I'm ready to book the bike. So the next day, me and Leon went and we booked my first Enfield.
So at the end of your 3rd round, how did you stop the bike? Did you have to Flintstone it?
First gear and really, really slow. I had to then, I put both the legs down. I said,
that's what I thought.
You told me the brakes, man. He said, sorry, Linda. I was like, okay, fine.
How did it start for you, Leon?
Oh, okay. So my cousin brother Sebastian. I was born and raised in UAE. In UAE, everybody loves cars and stuff. I really like the SUVs. I didn't like the cars that much. Till today, I don't like cars. I hate them. Actually, they should be off the road. That's a different conversation. But
don't look there.
Yeah, when I came down to India. When I came down to India, what happened was I met my cousin brother Sebastian, who was an avid biker, who still is an avid biker. I ride with him till today, and he's done a lot in terms of riding. So he had a Luna, a Bullet and stuff. So he taught me how to ride on a Luna, I think when I was in 9th standard or 10th standard or something like that in BTM. And as soon as, I mean, it came to me naturally because I always used to cycle. So I had the balance already, but I feel that, when you do something for the first time, whatever it is, right, you kind of get a feeling if it is for you or whatever. So there was something, I'm not going to say it ignited a flame in me and be all poetic and stuff. Something clicked and I really liked that feeling. And I used to look forward to coming down for holidays every year for that 1 month because I would spend at least a week with him and he would let me ride the Luna and stuff around. So that's where it started. And then of course, like most boys, you get a Kinetic Honda in college. That was my first bike. That was the worst bike I've owned. That what do you call it? That 2-stroke. I mean, what is that thing? That moped, right? The Kinetic Honda. The previous version of the Activa. I mean, right now every college kid has an Activa, but back in that time it was the
Kinetic Honda, yeah.
So that was a really bad bike.
One.
It was just horrendous. It used to break down all the time. I pushed it more than I rode it. So, if I was learning from your dad, I would be like, I'm ready, man. But yeah, okay, sidetracked again. So, yeah, and then I migrated from bike to bike, but that's where it all started, that Luna. And until today, I'm not saying that I love the Luna, but whenever I see a Luna, I know that that's where it started.
So what do you guys ride right now, and why have you chosen this bike?
So I have a Scrambler, Prime Scrambler. So a couple of years ago, so we were just browsing, we were window shopping. We like to check out bike showrooms and see what are the types of bikes and think of one day this will be in our garage.
Very weird.
Like how people think of gathering stuff for their house or home to collect things. We were browsing of what bikes would be in our place. So, so one of those days, we went to the Triumph showroom and we were going through. He was really into the Tiger bikes, which had come into the showroom very recently to the showroom. So he had checked in to see what are the colors, and so he was just browsing through that. And in the showroom, there's a room where they actually store the bikes that are supposed to be sold to the customers. So I noticed the Scramblers, the back of the Scrambler, which was parked in there. So I asked the guy, can I just go see what is the bike? He said, yeah, go ahead. So the minute I saw the bike, the first time I saw it, had this, I don't know, I just...
It lit a flame.
It felt something that I should be riding. It's like, this is the one that you need to be riding right now. At that moment, it was meant for me to see that bike. So it felt like the universe was telling, hey Linda, here you go. This is what you need to aim for. So he was mad over the Tiger, and I said, I want to pick up Scrambler one day. And it was just a fluke. It was not even I didn't even give a second thought about saying that how will I get it or how I will have it. It was just a thought that said, this is the bike that I want.
And it was in the universe.
And yeah, I think 2 years. Yeah, 2018. 2 years, and I'm riding my bike.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Yes, sir. You were saying something.
No, I was just saying that I remember that when she came with her new bike, and then every time she would come, I would ride it. It was fun for me also. I used to enjoy riding that bike. Now she doesn't come much, so
I would.
I miss the bike more. Sorry.
Well, I miss you, sir. I will come.
So the next question is for Leon, and I know what you ride. So this is for everyone out there who's watching this, that Leon rides a Honda Africa Twin, the DCT version. The real question is, why didn't you buy the Tiger if you were so mad over it?
Okay, so Difficult
What's
question.
your one?
So it's a difficult question. See, the tiger, like, see, most college kids when they grow up and stuff, they have these pictures. At least when I was growing up, of an R1 or a Hayabusa, one of those bikes, the super sport, right? I didn't have any of those bikes really. I had a couple of old pictures of Nortons, the much older ones. And honestly, I'm not some motorcycle geek also where I know the model, but I like the way it looked. And then I saw the tiger, I think, for the first time in 2012 or 13, somewhere there, towards the beginning of that. Not in India, but um, a video of that bike. And maybe it was 2013 as let's just say
Somewhere there.
yeah. Yeah. So as soon as I saw the bike, I didn't ride it. I didn't get to see it, physically in the flesh. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, I need this bike. I didn't know what it did or whatever, but I was like, this bike possibly looks like, it's the one bike that I need that'll take me everywhere.
So it
As in-
lit the flame. What
It
it
lit a flame.
The proverbial flame, yes. So fast forwarding to 2018. So how we decided to buy the bike was, we were riding back from Yerkad on our Mojos, and I kept telling her that I just need a little more power, on the highway, off road and stuff. It was a lot of fun because you don't really fly off road, although some of us do fly off our bikes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I what I kept telling her that I needed a little more power, and then she's the one who pushed me to say that you might as well go and see the tiger. But then because of budgetary constraints, we did look at the Versys. And the only reason why I didn't buy the Versys was because I felt it was a little top heavy for the city, and coming from a 300 Mojo, it's a big jump, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like there's anything much in between the 300 to the 650 at that time, because there was the Interceptor and all of that came much later. So I test rode it, did not like the whole top heaviness in the city, so I didn't pick up that. I did tell her that I like it because you're coming from a 300 to a 650cc, so you feel that power and stuff. You're like, all right, I will power through this. I'm going to be able to handle the bike in the city. But then I also told her that in about a year or two, I'll sell it and buy the Tiger. So that's when she told me that, if you're going to put all this money in now, and you've already decided to sell the bike even before buying the bike, it makes no sense to buy the bike. In hindsight, she's spot on there, because that's really stupid, now that I say it out loud, to even think that. So then we went to the Tiger showroom, booked the Tiger, all of that stuff. Loved the Tiger. I still love that Tiger. I mean, I can never say anything bad about a Tiger because it's just a beautiful bike. I'm not sure about the 900. For me, I think most people, you first look at a bike and aesthetically it should say, call out to you. I mean, it can say whatever BHP and all of that stuff. I think that's secondary unless you're a professional racer or some kind of stuff like that. But for me, when I saw the Africa Twin, I just absolutely loved the way it looked. Honestly, I watched enough videos of the bike. I never went and saw it in the flesh. In the videos, to be honest, it looked like a grown-up dirt bike, but a tiny bike. I thought the Tiger was massive. Then I went and saw the Africa Twin, and I was like, oh my God, this bike is beautiful.
Yeah, this time it was the bigger flame.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it started, growing. And then the fire was lit. So when I test rode, so we booked the Tiger and everything was done.
The same day we went.
Yeah, we booked the Tiger, and then that weekend, so we booked it on a Wednesday. On Saturday, she and a friend forced me to go down to Silicon Honda, and they wanted to see the bikes as well because they hadn't seen the bike. So when they saw the bike,
from that time, from Wednesday to whatever that weekend was, he was only going through these Africa Twin videos. Every time I come home, you're only Africa Twin videos running over and over again. I think he's completed the entire, like, if there is any video related to Africa Twin, he's watched it.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I have ran every
So I
search
said,
possible
I
on
can't
YouTube.
take this anymore. Let's just go there. Anyways, it's booked, so we know that there's a bike coming home. So let's give this one more shot. Let's just go see it once. Even I have not seen it, so let's just see it once. And just to be sure, saying that everything is clear and we are 100% sure that this is the bike for us. Fine. That's how we made it there.
Yeah, and as soon as
It's
we
the quintessential buyer's remorse as soon as you put the booking amount in.
Yeah, no. So for me, since it was always the Tiger, there was no other bike. But then after seeing the Africa Twin, I started going through the reviews, and honestly, the biggest put off was that DCT system, the dual clutch transmission system. I just did not. So I didn't want a souped up Dio.
Activa.
Yeah,
Safe.
yeah. I call it a souped up Dio only because whenever somebody says that, hey, it's just like an Activa, I'll be like, no man, it's a Dio, dude. It looks cooler. So as soon as I heard about the DCT system, was definitely not interested, and then I met Ayush, and he came and he was like, see, I know you booked the Tiger and stuff. The Tiger's a brilliant bike, man, but I think you should take this for a test ride. I was like, yeah, okay, cool, man. All right, you think that I will change my mind? All right, I start bike. So I started the bike. I took it down for, I think, about a kilometer or two, and it was changing gears exactly how I would change gears. And that was that.
Flame was lit.
This was the bike. Yeah. No, it became a full-blown fire. And that's how the Africa Twin was born.
It was like an oil well in Kuwait. I mean, I'm sure of that.
No, so that's how I got the Africa Twin. Do I have regrets? No way. Absolutely no.
Yeah.
So, what's your view on how it? You had a certain perspective on the DCT. What's it now? I'm sure our viewers would want to know from an owner how the DCT is compared to what people normally think it is.
Right. So, okay, it's not a direct comparison, but it's somewhat similar. I test rode the new manual 2020, the 1100 Africa Twin earlier, I mean this week, and it feels brilliant with the manual and all of that. The clutch, the gear shift, everything is smooth, and it's a little more torquier because it's got 8%, 10% more power. But that 8%, 10% on paper, it might look very small, but it feels like an entirely new bike.
Yep.
But if I were to pick another bike, I would choose the DCT any day over a clutch system. As in, of course, if I have to someday pick up a Tiger, a second-hand Tiger, maybe a 2018 or before that, I would pick up the Tiger because I absolutely love that bike. But any day DCT. And for everybody, so I've met a lot of people who kind of these jokes, oh, it's an Activa, it's like a scooter, you throttle it and it'll go and stuff like that. I understand where they're coming from, but it's also something that I don't even bother getting into because I was a hardcore clutch monkey, and I've completely changed. As in, I love that DCT system. And just in case you feel the bike's computer, which is on point all the time, very rarely does it shift to the wrong gear. But in case you want to correct it, even if you're not in manual mode, you have these paddle shifts that is just instant. As soon as you touch it, it'll change the gear for you.
Yeah.
So why all of the stress of clutch?
No, I think DCT is a brilliant system. It's just a matter of getting used to it.
Right.
Last time when we were talking, Arjun rode the Africa Twin for the first time to Goa, and he just couldn't stop singing like a canary about it. He just loved it, and so did Anup, who was riding the bike also halfway.
Right.
See, the market is becoming very interesting. So if you look at the 900 Tiger, which is coming in, it's a brilliant bike. People are saying it's the engine has changed, and there's a lot of changes that we brought, and it's a bit lighter. The new Africa Twin is also a bit lighter. It's about 8 kilos lighter, and if you see that, it feels less top heavy. On the other side, you have XR 900. F900 XR, which is Arjun's current favorite right now, and he's telling me to buy it.
Oh yeah, it looks killer. It
It's
looks
brilliant and the pricing is brilliant. So market is becoming interesting. So the reason I'm telling you this is because if you're looking at a second bike, the day Linda decides to give up her Scrambler,
No, for you, Linda.
Yeah,
We'll get you a
I
Tiger.
know what you're saying.
and she likes the Africa Twin, I think, the DCT version. I think so. I've seen her salivating
Basically,
over the bike.
I do.
basically, what Leon is going to try and do, and I know that he's been trying to do this, is he's going to get her to sell the Scrambler, and he's going to pick up a second-hand Tiger and tell her and cajole her to ride the Tiger for a while, so he can then have both his.
He's been
Uh,
sending messages saying that yes, I think if we had this, you can always switch. I can take the Tiger and take the
Tiger.
or to the office. And so if I have to go to quick kitchens and stuff, I just have to take the Tiger, like, and zip through traffic very.
Now, I think Linda should go and look at the F900 XR, and it's a 216 kgs bike with 105 bhp. It's a brilliant bike to ride, and given a chance, probably I would also look at it.
I will test ride.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
on that note, what's the next bike?
Well, what's the next bike, Linda?
Is there any garage goal or something like that?
Like how Rakesh sir had pointed out, I was looking at the Africa Twin.
Yeah.
I mean, I rode his bike. I took it for like a spin for inside a apartment complex. I just felt the bike took care of me. Like I was very intimidated by the bike. First of all, I felt that I couldn't handle it because it looked big. And when I sat, I said, just let the bike do its thing. And actually, the bike did its thing. It just took care of me. I didn't have to worry about the weight of the bike. And the turning radius. Like
Yeah.
I need a scrambler, I need a longer turning radius. I think I've fallen twice on near my office. It's a spiral basement,
Hmm.
and the returning radius is very short. So the first week which I took it, I fell twice on that spiral. So I know I know it takes a longer radius for me to turn the bike for my scrambler. But this one, when I took, and even the apartment, which the turn was, I wouldn't say short, but it took it. I didn't have to stretch it over. It took me very easily, and the bike handled. The bike was like, sit down and relax. I'll take care of it. I felt that when I was riding that bike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Turning radius, you're right. It's brilliant in Africa Twin. You get used to it, you can very quickly turn your bike around.
Yeah, I agree. Now coming to my garage.
And Leon, for you, the next bike, I
Okay,
think
no.
that would be an R garage goal, right?
Yeah, R.
You two are one unit.
Yes. So I will speak.
His and her garage.
I will speak on her behalf as well.
Interestingly, Arif, if you noticed, Linda said that she's ridden the Africa Twin just once. Okay, so I don't know if the R garage really works.
Yeah, even I was noticing.
Yeah.
No. So I actually told her after test riding the manual, because we both went together for test riding that bike, and as soon as I test rode it, I asked her to test ride it, and even Ayush was telling her to test ride it and stuff, and she was not sure if she wanted it to. So I thought that for some time I'll give her Optimus, and she can ride it around. So once she does that, she will fully understand that there's nothing to worry about, and the way the bike's weight is distributed is just brilliant. I mean,
Yeah.
It's with most ADVs, but I think that Honda has got it on point. And of course, the GS, because the weight is also really low, you don't feel the weight. But ADVs normally have to have that one trait, otherwise, it becomes a problem, because you drop these bikes at
I
some
also
stage.
think Leon is scared to give Linda the bike because I think he's scared he'll get stuck with the scrambler.
I don't want. I like the scrambler aesthetically. It looks brilliant.
Why don't you like the scrambler?
Okay, so there are two very important reasons. The first one is the heat.
It's not that.
Anyway, I mean, it is horrendous. I don't know how she uses it every day to work and uses it as a daily
Yeah,
driver.
many people ask the same question. How do I handle that heat?
Yeah.
I just don't get it. But and the other thing is, I like ADVs because of the suspension. I can stand right, and it doesn't really matter good roads, bad roads, no roads. The Scrambler, I've taken it 2-3 times. The exact same road where I was not feeling any bump. I was riding the same way, and there was this one time when I nearly dropped her bike. And she knows now, but that was only because when I reached the bump is when I realized that it's just too stiff. It's a fun bike. I'm not saying that it's a bad bike, but
It's
just
a
not.
different setup. It's a
Yeah,
very
yeah. I absolutely like ADVs,
Yeah.
and the Africa Twin has spoiled me. So coming back to the garage question very quickly, the Tiger 800, not the 900. The 900 has got everything on point, barring I think that Unibro. Maybe if I see that in the flesh, I might change my mind. But I didn't like that design. I could be wrong. I didn't like the Africa Twins design, to be honest. I thought it was a very small bike until I saw it. So we are open to
The
to
first
like
time when we
that.
saw the Africa Twin, also when we entered the garage, Ayush's place, the first bike we saw was that the guy who was about to go on a long
Yeah,
ride.
yeah.
He was fully kitted up, like the whole pannier system, the top box. So it was not the normal looking bike; it was the fully kitted up bike. So it looked like a majestic beast just standing there, and you're like, "This is the bike you want?"
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So Linda, stop this. So so okay, the Triumph Tiger 800 for now until we see the 900. The Africa Twin Adventure Sport, whichever variant that she's looking for, because at some stage she wants to.
I like the Tiger. I rode the 800, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, she did ride the
It was
800.
nice. It was
It's happening.
It was-
That's one off.
it was good.
Small tick.
So the Tiger, what was that bike? The Norden 801. Is it the 801? I mean, it was the concept bike, but now they said that they're starting to manufacture it.
yeah.
The Norden.
Yeah.
So again, I have not seen that bike in the flesh. It was just displayed in EICMA, I think it was. Was it EICMA?
Yeah, it was
And-
like,
Yeah.
but that
and-
thing is huge. That thing is really big.
Exactly. And so I told you, the first thing for me is as soon as I see the bike, it has to aesthetically, I judge a book by its
Yeah,
cover.
very shallow. Like that.
Yeah, very good. Wow, this is just very painful. So,
I look at the deep inside. What is the substance? He looks at the.
no. So first, so I'm a straight shooter, and I've always been bluntly honest. Although I come across as
Prick.
prick and not being sensitive to various issues or whatever. The reality is, you look at something. I'm talking about a bike here, and if you like the design, you will go for it. See, now I'm not going to slam any bike, but there is one bike that I truly hate, absolutely hate. I'm not going to mention which bike that is. The design of it just kills me, but I know that is the bike that started the whole super sport revolution. The bike geeks will know
Which bike is that?
it is a certain Japanese warrior.
Okay, so that's a relief to Arif now.
Hey, no. It has nothing to do with.
BMW.
Yeah,
No,
it has.
but when you talk about super sport, that's why he sat up and he wants to know which super sport.
Yeah.
I think that's a super sport. I mean, it started that, and that's when the laws came in for them to cap the power because they just kept increasing it.
Okay,
So there
I
was
know
one
what you're talking about.
Yeah, there was one bike that started all of this. I
It's
just
one of
hate
those.
the design.
It's one of those.
Don't go
cult
there.
Bikes. It's one of those cult bikes which is out of production now. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one. So
Okay.
There's a separate fan base for that bike.
Yeah.
See, there's a fan base for everything. Like even serial killers or serial murderers and stuff. They have their own fans.
I'm
Doesn't mean
comparing the bike to a serial
Yes,
killer.
But
serial
dude,
killer.
do you know
I-
it's fun riding that bike, by the way?
What?
If you ride that out of production bike, it's
No, I
fun riding.
bet I bet it's an insanely good bike. I'm not even saying that it's a bad bike, but I think also, honestly, no offense to anybody. Actually, yeah, people might take offense.
No,
Anybody who watches people ride that bike, at least in places that I stay in and around Bangalore, it's always people who seem to, think it's cool to ride with a chappal or without the helmet
yeah,
and no gloves, no nothing, with two buttons open and maybe a gold chain or whatever. It's totally cool. I might be stereotyping it, but I'm almost certain people who have seen people ride this bike in Bangalore, very rarely have I seen somebody fully kitted up.
yeah.
Kudos to those guys. I'm not saying that, their bike is bad. Their bike's brilliant. The machine started everything. I just feel that it's horrendously ugly. It's aerodynamic, but ugly. Moving away from that, the Thruxton R, the
Mhm.
Norden, the Tiger, of course. Do I like any of the Ducatis?
Yeah.
I like the Hyperstrada.
Africa Twin.
No, the Africa Twin's always going to be there. I'm never going to sell the bike. Never.
Never sell
Never. No. I will never sell this bike. Even if I buy an Africa Twin, this guy will always be there because honestly speaking, I've always loved all of my bikes. Right from the Discover that my dad bought me, I hated the Kinetic Honda that does not make the list. Hated that bike. I think I pushed it more than I actually rode miles on it. So the Discover, all of my bikes, I took care of it, but no bike did I have a connection except my Continental GT, which is late now. May rest in peace. A guy smashed that thing to bits, and it the chassis broke in 4 places or whatever, and my hand broke in 14 places thanks to a drunk driver. So I lost that bike, and I was really attached to that bike. And the only other bike that I'm truly attached to, it's not because of the amount that I spent on it or the accessories that I put on it or none of that. It's just purely there is a connection that we have, and he understands how crazy I am, and he's taken many a fall, but he's always stepped up. He's like, it's okay, you're a noob. I'm going to take care of you. So yeah, so the Africa Twin will always be there. I can't think of any other bike. The Hyperstrada, I really like it because it's very lean. It's super torquey and powerful. I'm a short guy. Like I said, she's taller than me. But because I don't fear falling off bikes, it's okay. Bikes will fall. It's on 2 wheels. It doesn't balance on its own like a car. So it's bound to fall. So that doesn't really bother me. Super sports, I know that Arif, it's your thing. I'm not going to slam super sports or whatever. It's just that I don't have the vision, definitely, because I have massive eye problems, or I don't have the control required to be on a super sport. Like, you have to call out your weaknesses, right? Because it's life or death. Because if I sit on your bike and I try and ride like you, I'll die. I don't care what gear I'm wearing. I just won't make it.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's too powerful for me. And that's why probably maybe even a KTM Adventure or whatever, when it comes down, those things have what, 140 horses, 170 horses or something like that. I'm not sure. I've read these figures. I've never rode one of those bikes. Maybe I could get used to it only because of its ADV trait. But I just think that there's too much power. You don't need that much power, especially in India. You definitely don't need that much power. I mean, you would be swatted behind a bus or in front of a truck if you're trying to achieve those speeds on the highway. And if you're going to be responsible like Mr. Arif, taking his super sport on a track and racing.
Yeah. So do you have any bikes that...
No, I mean, the Tiger was one of the Tiger 800. For me, it would be this, like how Ravi said, it will be 2 bikes. One, if I have to, and if money is not a constraint, I would never.
Money is not a constraint, Linda.
Linda, let the universe worry about the money.
Yeah.
So it will be 2 bikes. One would be your domestic local use, and the other one would be to travel the continent.
Yeah.
Or just 2. I am not greedy. It's 2.
So Arif, if you look at the trend, which we have spoken to so many people, and this trend comes out very quickly. The second bike is either a simple bike like one of those Street Twins or Scramblers or Interceptor 650. Another bike which is gaining traction is ADV 390 KTM. People started buying that as a second bike, and lots of big bike owners have bought this recently.
So again, the one question that I wanted to ask to you, both of you again, is what is the first thing that you guys do when you buy your bike? Like, is there a specific set of things that you go ahead with? Like, these are the things that you want before the bike is delivered to you from the showroom, or the first thing that you get done to it once you got the bike out of the showroom?
So when I first bought the Bullet, I was not aware of the whole safety net, whatever the crash guards, the whole shebang that comes with protecting your bike. Was not completely oblivious to that part of riding. The only thing I knew was you need to make sure you have a helmet and a good road sense to ride a bike. So as we progressed, our bikes from mine was from Bullet to a Mojo. Then the top box came into place, and then when we started researching about what goes into maintaining a bike. So even before thinking of another bike, the first thing that we looked at was the service costs, the maintenance, how fast can you get the parts. These are the first thing that we checked even before looking at. So aesthetically, when he says that you look at a bike, fantastic, you fall in love. But after you buy, you need to live with it. So what if it breaks down? What if it falls? What will be the cost? So we are middle class family, right? We don't. It's not like we. If it drops, we have the means to just go and get stuff just like that. So what is the means necessary to make sure that doesn't happen? So proactively, how can we make sure that stage doesn't arise? So the budget came down to breaking down into making sure the bike is protected first, so that you don't have to face that problem again. So when it falls, you know that whatever you've invested in for the bike, it will take care of it. So that's how the whole thought process behind buying a bike came into the bigger bikes. So when we broke it down, so that much budget was set aside only for making sure the bike is protected. So that is the first thing. You make sure that your bike is protected and you have your gear ready. So it's like you're making insurance for your bike proactively. You're making sure the bike is protected with the gears that is available. And you have your jacket, your boots, your helmet. Just invest it the first time. Just make the first investment. It might pinch your pocket a little, but think of it in a larger investment for say 5-6 years. Think of all the things that you can save by, even if your bike falls, you're sorted. Your bike is taken care of. So think of it as a long-term investment. That's when you're buying any kind of bike. So that is I learned it from Leon himself. He is the one who actually did the research, showed that these are the things that we need. Because I thought, why are we spending on it? Like, we've already spent so much. We're going to spend so much on a bike. Why do you want to spend that? Eventually, we might add it. No. You never know. Even by just stepping out of the showroom, you don't know what is happening, what's going to happen next. Make sure that your bike is fully protected. It will be a long-term investment. Trust me, it is just a long. I'm whenever people come and ask me, hey, nice bike, whatever, I first show them these are the things first I bought. Make sure that you invest in this place. Why? Because I've dropped my bike. So every time when I've dropped my bike, the crash guards which is protected, I say, oh God, thank God that was there. I know that my parts would take 1 month to reach, and I would be putting in 2 months' salary into getting that part. So, so Leon introduced me to getting putting the budget aside for making sure that the bike protectors are first in place. And the gear stuff was already in. So I already had my jacket, my helmet. Helmet was another thing, making sure that you don't go for the cheap stuff. When you're able to spend so much money on your dress or the bike itself, if you don't have a head, there's no point.
Yeah.
So make sure that your helmets are dog certified, or what's the other one?
Snell.
Snell ones. Yes, Snell. So these are very basic. These are very basic that people like. I was from that mentality. Like, why do I have to spend it right now?
She used to have a steel bird.
You are the one who are riding without a helmet.
That was that's a different story. My younger self, I was stupid.
So
But I think it's a valid point. What you're saying, Linda, is so true. The quality matters a lot, and a lot of people skimp on it.
Invest in the basics. If your foundation is right, that is you're protecting your bike, you have your proper gear, it is a one-time investment. If you're going to invest on something, invest on that. You go on your rides without thinking twice. You will have that safety net that your bike is protected. You will not have to worry about the unfortunate things it might or might not.
Yeah.
Actually, you can't be
And,
guaranteed.
and the good thing is that even your accessories that you put on your bike can be insured now. So God forbid, but if you have a crash, you can always replace those parts without any cost.
Yeah, like Boy Scouts, always be prepared. So I'm a kind of person who always like to think of a plan A, B, C with me. So I feel that when we go out, and I've seen that with Leon as well, he makes sure if we are going for a ride, we make sure that the bikes are already checked once in the showroom, the service center, the air is filled, the tank is full, the puncture kit is there, and the bags are kitted up, everything. So if we are taking so much precautions to go for a ride, you
Yeah.
need to make sure that your bike is already ready to take that challenge with you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's where we got introduced to Bike and Biker, when we got our bikes.
And I think that is an opinion both of you share. Protection comes first. And I think Leon needs it more than anybody else because he's very...
Definitely. I'm like a child on a trail. You give me a road patch, I'm like, whoa,
I
switch
was
off
wondering
traction, switch off ABS, here we
if there
go.
was a way, there was a protection, like a bubble wrap or something, we could have given him that.
No,
I think all the money he spent on protecting his bike, he's recovered that some 3 times over already.
I agree.
100%.
Easily. I mean, Arif, coming back to your question, same thing like she said, protection first on the bike. That was an absolute necessity, not because of anything, but this goes back to my Discover. As soon as I took the Discover out of the showroom, so I got the bike out of the parking lot and I was turning left. There was something wrong with that crash bar accessory or whatever that they attached to the bike, right? So I told them it's fine. I'll come back tomorrow to get it. And right there, I dropped the bike because a rig guy came and when you get a brand new bike, no matter how old you are super careful for some reason. It's not like I was really old that time. I was just a kid, but I was an excited kid because that was my first new bike. And I dropped it, and that's when I realized that you need to protect your bike whatever happens. And I'm glad I have all of that cage around Optimus. Otherwise,
No, in fact, I hope you're going to share all the photographs of your crashes. And
I have a lot of photographs of my crashes, but today's trail. So today I had to separate it.
yeah.
And first the right side took a hit, and then I spilled on a trail when I went down, and I was punching above my weight, and then I managed to do it the first time. So I punched, through that invisible layer and said that I can do it once more. And it's not like I have some training or something, I'm just going by gut instinct, and that is probably the most stupid thing to do. So I'm going to go for those level 1 classes and stuff and try and figure out, what they say at all of these training schools, because I've been riding trails for some time now. Close to a year, I've done a fair few trails in and around Bangalore. You find a village, you go down the road, and you will find these nooks that go into, different mountain ranges and stuff, the smaller mountain ranges. So I've done that, and I've had a lot of fun. It's just that I think I need to, make sure that I invest in safety, and that is probably going to get this training session, because I have a problem with dirt. I love it. So I think I'm Chris Birch suddenly, but talent level is, minus 100 if I compare it to Chris Birch. So I keep flying off that bike, but the bike's always, rock solid. So protection, first thing. Top box, second thing. Top box, because when I bought the Africa Twin, one of the first things, like she said, middle class family. So, if I have to buy a bike, it's probably the worst way to think about it. When I've seen certain superbike owners and stuff, and I meet them on their cute breakfast rides
Hmm.
when I stop in between places. So I've seen people, I mean, people have told me that you don't buy a bike like this to ride it as a daily commuter, right? I understand where they're coming from and stuff, but then when you can afford one, you go and pick the one that you know you like, and which speaks to you. And the Africa Twin, I use it as everything: my commuter, tourer, off-roader,
Yeah.
RS assistance vehicle, and all of that stuff. So I need a top box because I go to play football and stuff around the city. Not now, but you know, before, when the good
Lockdown.
time.
Yeah.
2019. No, I'm just going to say 2019. 2020 is a whitewash. I cannot wait for this year to get over.
Yeah.
So the top box is super important because I pile my laptop bag there, my kit bag and stuff like that. So top box and crash protection, first thing to go on the bike. And then later, you know, I kept adding, but then the first thing were these.
You're
In fact, the
actually
falls that you had today, 2 falls, and I saw the engine guard on both sides, and I was quite
Character.
happy. Sorry.
That's character. That's
Yeah.
character.
So every time I land up painting and correcting them, but I was quite happy that there was no bend, despite the fact he's had a bad fall on both occasions.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it just goes to say that choosing a good quality product like Repco or something, it really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, makes massive sense. As in, if I had the budget, I would have honestly maybe gone for an alt rider. I do like the new GV system as well. I really like the bash plate. But Hepco Becker, you know, if you're watching this, guys, I've crash tested your product for the Africa.
Oh yeah, you
On
have
point, it works.
tested it, yes.
Yeah. And like Arjun, you rightly said, it's paid it 2-3 times over.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I can't even remember the number of times that bike went down. But is the bike in good condition? It's in fantastic condition. Are the crash bars in good condition? A few marks, but you know.
that reminds me. Tell us about the time that the first time you really crashed the bike and you ended up in a drain. I really want to hear that story.
That was unfortunate.
Please
It was,
send some pictures of that. Yeah.
yeah, I'll definitely do that. So I've been taking that road since 2004, and you know it's like muscle memory. You know the roads there, and I think it was a month last that I'd taken that road, and I was looking at the outer ring road, and I was thinking about other stuff, which you should not be doing while riding a bike. But you know, they just took it for granted, like most of us do at certain stages, especially the roads that we know. And that is when I think we let our guard down, which is a big problem. And but that crash in the drain taught me, you know, never trust any gully. So I was going down this road, and they dug a drain right in the middle of it without any barricades or anything. It's 60% my fault because I should have, you know, understood how the government officials work with their on point German precision kind of stuff. But for 40%, I'll blame it on them. But 60% on me. I didn't see this. I saw it last minute. I jammed the brakes, but the front wheel had already kind of dove in, and I was thrown off the bike. I mean, yeah, I'll send you the pictures. So you will see the bike's clearly parked in the drain. I mean, the sides are dislodged and it parked itself. And the damage to the bike after a crash like that, and this was the day after getting the Outex system fitted on that bike. Nothing happened. The rim didn't bend, and it was a pretty bad crash. I mean, I would have hit that thing at around 30 or 40 easily, or maybe slightly more than that. And I literally flew off that bike, and that was the first real fall, and it was a really bad one. And of course, I was panicking because I thought that, you know, I've damaged my dream bike. And we took it out. We built a small ramp, and we got the bike off the drain. And Ayush checked the bike. I mean, all of these guys checked the bike. They opened it out. They checked it. I kept saying that, you know, the bike bounced like that. Please check the suspension, the swing arm. They opened the bike out. They checked everything. They were like, hey, you know what? There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
Few scuff marks on um, the cards, and yeah, the left side Hepco pannier rack had come off, and that was not because of the crash. That's because I was telling people, the kind-hearted Samaritans, please don't touch the bike. It's fine. I will ride it out. But as I was coming out, they wanted to help lift it, so people lifted it by the rack, and that's how it came off. Otherwise, even that was,
Yeah.
you didn't scream at them because they were trying to be helpful and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a really bad crash, and it was so the spills in trails happens. It's not like it doesn't happen. Of course, to the more experienced riders, it happens lesser, and more experienced riders also will not take on-road tires to the
That's
trail.
right.
If you want to do some hardcore stuff, which we've learned today, and the trail that we did today on a scale of 1 to 5 was easily like between a 2 to a 3, because it had a lot of rocks and a lot of loose gravel and stuff. So the first time we went, it was really okay because we were all very cautious and stuff, and then two of us decided to unleash hell. One succeeded and one lay flat on his face, and you're looking at that one.
Leon, we are doing similar trails on the old airport road these days, and I do it with an interceptor.
Oh wow, that hurts.
Situation of the road
Huh?
in Bangalore. So every day when I ride back, the old airport road was completely dug up because of the metro work, and I would ride that every day on the interceptor.
I have not been on that road.
Maybe you should try it. You don't have to go that far.
Most of Bangalore was like that, but these trails, some of them are beautiful.
But if you fall on old airport road, I think your ego will be more bruised than the bike.
Hey, no, okay. See, honestly, right? Let me be honest. My first thing is when somebody looks at me when I fall in or whatever, right? It doesn't hurt. I'm like, it happens. Chalta hai, boss. And
It's a
continue
fun
with it. As in, that doesn't hurt my ego. What hurts my ego is when I play football and somebody puts the ball through my leg. Like, fuck, that shit can't happen. That hurts me. But dropping the bike and stuff, never, because it's a passion and I love riding, and it kind of goes hand in hand, right?
Yeah,
You will
yeah.
drop your bike at some stage. If it's not because of your own stupidity, 9 out of 10 times it's my own stupidity. Some other doofus will do it for you. So a friend of mine that rides with me, Sam, he kept saying he'd never dropped it with his bike and he was really happy and stuff. And on our last weekend ride, he dropped it. It was a small drop, but I could not stop laughing. I was like, finally, it's happened. Now you can, get off your high horse and come down. Because I think dropping, and especially ADVs, right? I remember reading somewhere, it might have been written by a bloke like me, a noob. If you have not dropped your bike on the trails, it means you're not doing it right.
No, I think you suddenly inserted another very interesting topic, which is when you graduate from a small bike to a larger bike, what changes for you? And if you notice in your entire discussion, few things have changed very drastically. One is the kind of protection, the kind of stuff that you need to do is to keep you safe. The complete experience changes in terms of riding the bike, handling the bike. Linda mentioned so many things. The U-turn is wider, and because she also graduated from a Bullet, I guess, and the comforts of the bike, all this starts mattering. But one thing I've noticed, which happens, and people find that very, very difficult to accept, your expenses climb in terms of all your accessories that you buy. They're not cheap. All the maintenance that you do, they are not really cheap. I think Africa Twin may be an exception in terms of maintenance is low. Most of the bikes are a little expensive to maintain. And also the fact that, your general perspective of riding changes. You're riding an S1000 RR today, and if you were riding, let's say, a KTM 390, let's say even RC, your experience just drastically differs. And
Right.
this is what people have seen when they come to a larger bike. They find it very difficult to digest the fact that, oh, my expenses have gone up, everything has gone up. So like you rightly said, you again brought that point, middle class, if you're buying a huge bike, you should be ready for that.
Yeah, because see, it's really easy for most people in IT and these corporate jobs to get a
Yeah.
loan approved, but nobody looks at the actual cost of the bike in terms of the service cost, the accessories, your brake pads,
Tires. Oh,
your
expensive.
tires, your insurance, stuff like that. So we did our research. Like she said, we found out what a chain sprocket costs and
Yeah.
create a cute little Excel sheet and stuff like that. And it did weigh into, our decision to buy a bike. But in terms of, the Tiger, the Africa Twin, of course, there were other ADVs in the market, but they were one out of our price bracket, and two, it was not something that I really fancied. So even if I have all the money in the world, for me, an 80 in terms of ADV is more than enough for my skill level and all of
Yeah.
that. And with, let's be honest here, right? Nobody is going to clip down a trail at and using 140 horses. Nobody is going to do that.
Nobody's doing that.
So most of the ADV guys also, so I know quite a few of the ADV guys that, are open about it, that I want a comfortable cruiser, a sports tourer, or, using an Africa Twin or whatever to cruise around, the country. And I'm not really going to do trails and stuff, which is perfectly fine. But I just find it a little annoying because, when you're in the smaller CC bikes, right? I have not seen such a huge disconnect. Like there is, brand royalty and loyalty and stuff comes into play. I understand that. But if people just look at the genre of bikes that you like I personally love an ADV, and then the closest to an ADV would be a retro bike, and then probably everything else, right? So, but I'm not going to say a Panigale or an S1000RR and say that's a shit bike. I have a problem only with one bike, and that's only because of the people that ride in Bangalore, that particular bike. So when we migrated from this 300 to the 900 and the 1000, the kind of people that we have met, really amazing people with their experiences and all that. And then you have, of course, in every breed of rider or every category of rider, you'll have all of these guys. But it's just shocking to see a lot of middle class families like ourselves have picked up big bikes but did not do due diligence. Like the Multistrada, beautiful bike to look at. Is it for me? No, because I want to take the bike off road. And the 1260S is a lot of power, and I feel that it is again top heavy to kind of do the stuff that I want to do. And I'm not a tall guy, so there is no way I can flat foot that bike. Even if I put a lowering kit, then it's counterproductive, because then you are lowering the bike and you're going to take it off road, which would make no sense. So where was I going with this? That it's like the train left the station and I'm still here.
No, I think you're just trying to cover the point that the dynamics of owning a larger bike, and especially when you shift from a small bike, is completely different. And I have personally seen an individual buy an Africa Twin, and that's one of the guys you may or may not know. And he has built a bespoke engine guard at fraction of the cost. Very clever, very nice. We all like that. It may work, but 90% of times it will not work. Now, when you buy a 17-15 lakhs bike, and when you put a 4,000 rupees guard, and which is bespoke, made by some local guy with welding, then I don't think you should buy a Africa Twin. You should go and buy a Bullet.
The train came back to the station, by the way.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Going back to that dude that I know, really nice chap, wanted a bike, loved the Multistrada, could afford the Multistrada to buy it, EMI, whatever. I think it was his second or third service. Was it his second or third service? I think it was around 40K or something like that.
Wow.
What do they call that service? Is that the Desmo service?
Desmo service.
Yeah. So I remember him pinging me and telling me that, hey, this is what the bill is and stuff, dude, I'm going to sell it and stuff like that. So I didn't want to tell him I told you so, but you guys know me. I did tell him.
Yeah. I'm sure you did. Because a Multistrada is not a simple bike to own. It's about 1 lakh a year, easily.
Right. And that's a lot of money for, the service cost bit. Yeah. So Now he's gone and picked up what is that? What's the Mojo? The Java, the Java. He sold his Multistrada, and someday he wants to buy the Multistrada again. But I think he did it. He had to cut his losses essentially because there is no way that you could
Yeah,
you
it is.
pay so many EMIs and then expect to pay this amount suddenly. So a lot of people need to look at it practically, as in anybody can walk in and get a loan and pick up the bike, but it's what comes
After
after
that, yeah.
the
I'll
service.
tell you our experience, Leon, when we bought Street 750. I think Arjun graduated from FZ or something. I had no bike. That was my first bike after 20 years, and I just went and bought it. And when they told us the price of the engine guard and the backrest and the rack, and then I realized there's a thing called exhaust, and then there's a tuner, and there's a filter, and it was shocking. I was shocked that you can spend so much on a bike. After 4 or 5 years of riding, I do realize it's an expensive hobby. But I've seen many individuals who discuss this in various forums. They're always trying to find a cheaper way to do things. It's a huge demand in the market, but there is no cheaper way to do it. If you want to put some quality stuff and you're buying a big bike, be ready to spend a couple of lakhs on top of it.
Yeah.
Like even
In
like
fact,
lights, good
in
lights
fact,
don't come cheap.
like you said, even I remember when I had the first service of my street, when the bill came, I was like, whoa, that's expensive, and that's more than how much I service my car for, right? And that's what freaked me out. I was like, I don't spend this much on the car. What's this bike taking so much money for? And then, like
Right,
you
right.
said, you come up to the insurance, and then you get hit by a huge insurance bill. You're like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And it keeps building from there. And then
So I
you've
think
got gear, which you need to have
one
good
of the
gear as
reasons
well.
why Enfield has succeeded in the market is because the cost of ownership is pretty low. Today, I own an Interceptor just to potter around town, and my service is less than 2K, and parts are few hundred rupees, whatever you buy. Most of the parts are not expensive. Some things are expensive, which is your major parts like exhaust if you break, or tank and all that. But generally, it's very very easy and simple to own. The attention you get from your service guy may be a little lower than a superbike service center, but I think the faults remain the same. So the experience is very very normal. But in 1 year of ownership of Intercept, I may have spent 5,000, 6,000 rupees. But accessories I spent. I did spend money there also. It's about 40, 50,000 rupees is on the bike.
Right, right.
No, but so brands like KTM, Enfield, Bajaj, etc., they bring down the cost of all of this purely on the basis of volume, right?
Yeah.
When
And
Triumph is selling a
quality
few
comes.
hundred bikes, or Ducati selling a few hundred bikes, BMW selling a few hundred bikes in a year, these guys are selling thousands of bikes in a month.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's a huge difference straight back.
No, I completely agree, and that's why I think the Triumph alliance with Bajaj, right, upcoming,
Yeah.
because they want a piece of that action. Because otherwise, it's really hard for the bigger companies also to continue sustaining.
Yeah.
Smaller companies like the KTM 390 Adventure has changed everything. I mean, the Interceptor and the GT started it. A bike at that price point with I mean it's a brilliant bike. I mean, a lot of people say that it's not a Royal Enfield because it's so smooth and it's got proper character. I'm not saying again that the Royal Enfields are bad bikes. They're brilliant bikes, and I've owned a couple of them. But I think that benchmark is closing. So the next couple of years, like you said rightly, at the top end, it's getting really competitive with BMW
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
the Tiger.
In fact, the Interceptor would be termed in a few years down the line. They'll call it a legendary bike, which changed the entire market. It's
Right.
going to be listed as that. There's no doubt about it. Like the way we talk about Street 750, which worked as a catalyst for people to own Harleys. Probably Interceptor will do the same thing for Royal Enfield. And of course, KTM, it's now upping its game. So there is a lot of mid-segment heat, definitely.
And I'm sure that as the Indian riders progress in terms of the kind of options that they have,
Yeah.
Once they get into the 650 category, say Triumph, the alliance with Bajaj yields good bikes, you'll always aspire to say that, hey, you know, I want that bike someday. So it makes it easier for people because you have had a proper taste of what, you know, some amount of refinement is. So you will know what that upper cap is once you try, say, an Interceptor and stuff, and then you go and ride one of the more what do you call these classics? What is that range? Bonneville's.
Mm.
They feel almost
New
the
retro
same. Of
bikes.
course, the torque and the power is different, but in terms of characteristic, if I like the characteristic of the Interceptor and I'm that kind of a rider, I will immediately look at the Bonnie range because I might want some more power. Like I wanted some more power when I had the Mojo, and it's just bound to happen. It's just that people need to be very careful that it's a lot of money that you put in. It could be a passion, it could be a hobby, whatever, but it involves a lot of money. So I also advise some of my friends when they want to buy these kind of bikes, look at the second-hand market first, see what are the prices in the second-hand market. If you know the owner and you're getting it from them, pick it up, because then you have that much more money to, you know, spend on your accessories and all of that stuff. But if you
It's a
want to buy,
lot of second-hand bikes come loaded with accessories. I mean, it's just
yeah, and it makes it easier, right, to do the service and stuff. Because if I've saved up this much X amount of money, I can buy the second-hand bike and then uh, invest in service and stuff. But again, good second-hand bikes, it completely depends on you knowing the owner and the market. Yeah,
Yes,
that's.
sorry.
So another question that I wanted to ask, that's a great insight on how to own a bike, and I think people generally forget that you know, it's a very expensive hobby. So that's one thing that people should always be on the lookout for. Other things, so you guys, do you take care of your bike on your own, or do you leave it to the professionals and let them do the job?
So the basic stuff with the bike. So we wash it, we clean it, polish it, chain clean, check the brake pads, check the brake liners. That's about it. I'm not going to suddenly say that, you know, I know how to build a bike from scratch and stuff. That's about it. Yeah.
So,
And
Linda, I have a question. Does he attend to your bike also?
yes.
Yes.
Oh, so I think he compensates for not washing the plate.
Yeah. So yeah, when it comes to the bikes, I will take care of it. I mean, if I have to, so I make sure that the tires always have I have a TPMS system. She doesn't, but I keep making sure that, you know, air is filled. Wow.
Multiple airs.
Yeah, you have some airs about you.
My
Okay.
parents were English teachers. Dad, mom, if you're watching this, sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Check the air pressure, the brake liners, and the brake pads to see when it's wearing out. And when I'm servicing, I have to give the bike on service in the coming week. So I wanted to do a few stuff or watch Naveen once, and I hope Ayush lets me. The last time he let me do that, the top box flew off. So I just want to, you know, be able. So changing the engine oil and stuff is relatively easy. It's not complicated at all. But fitting the brake pads absolutely on point, right? That I need to completely know, because once I removed it and fitted it back, I was not confident until I showed it to them and they said it was right. But I know that it was more fluke and looking at a few YouTube videos and stuff. So I want to understand these basics. I don't want to open out the engine and see what's happening with the DCT or the clutch system and stuff. That I definitely don't want to do. That I'll definitely leave to the professionals. But all the other basic stuff, yeah.
So apart from this, what are the plans post lockdown or whenever all this pandemic ends? Do you guys have a ride plan?
Not really, to be honest, because I think you know.
I think in 2019 we were talking about we need to do a trip to Bhutan this year.
Yeah.
That went down the drain.
2021 then.
Yeah. So, but he gets to go he started going every weekend for these trails. I get caught up in work. So I've decided that one of these days I will be joining him for the trains as well.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be fun because yeah, there's no rides plan, Arif, only because everything is locked down, right? So even if say Karnataka opens up and the other states are locked down, we've been to most places in Karnataka. Not that we don't mind going back, but it's not like a proper ride, not like a Bhutan or going to the northeast or going to the mountains. So we will do smaller rides in and around, but nothing major until at least some sense of normalcy
Yeah.
comes. As in, it's
The
never.
next question is what adding to what Linda said about her work. So how do you guys? I believe you both work in corporate world. How do you guys manage to take the time? Obviously now it is all work from home and everything. But before this, how did you guys manage to take the time out and write?
So we plan the rides accordingly, like quarterly. So every 3 months. So I work in a place where there are enough. I think it has the most number of leaves than any other company that I've seen.
It's just not fair, but
Like, we have 42 leaves in a year,
Oh man. Okay.
and it is
Lucky.
given at the starting of the year. You use it however you want. So I break down my leaves every quarter. So like a 3. So if we go as well, since he is in a essential services line, he will not take leaves more than say 3 days. So I still have my leaves pending. So I have the option to take a week or say 10 days off, but he doesn't have that privilege. So we make sure that we take those 3 days off. Even if it's a weekend trip, let's say if we start off on Friday, we make sure we come back by Monday evening or Tuesday morning. That is the only frame that we have for taking holidays. So it is pretty manageable because it's just 3 days off. It's fine.
What is the most memorable ride that you have guys had? Or are there any particular moment that you will always remember your life or something like that?
I would like to answer that question, right?
Yeah.
So I've done a fair few rides. My most memorable ride was to Nandi Hills. That's some 60 kilometers or something from here. That's because I wanted to go there and propose to her. And when I went there, that's when I lost my Continental GT. A drunk kid in a Zoom car smashed right through me. So I flipped. He hit me from behind. I flipped over his roof and stuff like that. I broke my hand in 14 places. And even with all of that, because of the commitment to what I set out to do that day, even with all of that pain, more than anything else, I think it was adrenaline. And honestly, at that point, all I thought about was this is going to be a cool thing to say. With a broken hand, with a broken bike, I still proposed to her. True.
That's a very good story for a job interview. Yeah. The commitment that you've
It
shown.
actually happened. So
And
so
also,
yeah, that was.
I think you also played on the emotion there, because in that situation, I don't think she would have said no.
Yeah.
Well played.
And it still doesn't mean that you can leave your plate unwashed. Okay.
Yeah. I will wash the plate. I'll send you guys a picture of a washed plate as well. So that
No, we'll believe you if Linda sends us that picture, because you could just take a new plate and
Some plate and in a chumma send it to us.
right. No, so that was the most memorable ride of mine. What was yours? Don't say the same thing. That was not a ride. That's
No,
mine.
I
Yeah.
hate that place. I'm not going back.
Oh yeah, she doesn't go to Nandi Hills. I went back to the place twice to that spot because it's just
It was a horrible thing to see. I mean, the guy clipped me. I fell, and he ran over him. I mean, through him. So
Wow.
I can only remember. I can only associate that place with that accident. So I am not going back to that place.
I don't think any of us are fond of Nandi Hills much. It's once or twice kind of thing, and then you.
right. And now there's a traffic jam on Nandi Hills, as in at least before COVID. I don't think Nandi Hills is open.
No, it's
But-
not.
Shut down.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah. So what was yours?
Our first trip was Korea, right? The one with Mojo.
Yeah, Korea was our first trip.
Korea
Right.
was the trip because I had never been through Ghats ever. I've never ridden through Ghats, so that was my first experience. And Leon was very protective
Mm.
or bossy.
Protective.
Okay.
Go with protective.
So it was like
Oh.
honk at every turn. You need to make sure I go slow. He wanted so he and Anto, our best friend. So they used to go on these rides through Ghats. So they know in and out of how to ride Ghats. So they are like semi pros.
Mm.
So I was a newbie who's going through these Ghats. So he was very careful. He made sure that so we had our centers. So he used to communicate. He used to go in the front of the bike, and he used to tell, "There's a truck coming. Slow down." So.
So she was enjoying the ride and I wasn't.
Yeah.
Because had she been doing that, I would have been, throttling through and coming.
So it taught me. I mean, it showed a different side of Leon. The one which. I would say I'm a better rider because of him. Yeah. I mean that ride taught me
Yeah.
that. I would
Yeah.
say the credit goes to him. Because I was not prepared for it. I was not. I was very scared of the whole thing because I knew the trucks coming in were really fast,
Yeah.
and I didn't want to be a wuss and say, "Hey, Leon, let's go back."
Mm.
And I said, "Okay, let's just power through it." And so he made sure that I was comfortable enough to do that, complete that ride. So when coming back, it was fine. I mean, I knew exactly how to do the whole thing.
So since we are coming to an end for this about this interview, I just really need to ask this question: where did you guys hear about Bike and Biker, and how has your experience been?
Oh yeah.
She heard of Bike and Biker through me. So I should ideally be answering this question, right?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I heard of Bike and Biker when I went to Honda and we needed to source the parts and stuff. So I heard about Bike and Biker for the first time there. But I needed to come to Bike and Biker personally because I called the Bike and Biker helpline on a Sunday. And I asked, "Are you guys open?" When somebody picked up, because I was not sure that, if it's one of those working cells and you've taken it home or whatever. And there was this condescending tone on the other end. "Yes, of course, we are open." I wanted to know who was the guy that I spoke to. I just wanted to see the prick. And then I met him, and initially we had like with all of you guys, it was a customer, relationship. Is it? Yeah. And then we became far more closer over a period of time. Not that we don't source our stuff from you guys. We source all of our stuff from you guys. But one of the things that really stood out about Bike and Biker, and I keep telling that to my friends as well, is the app. Because the app is huge in terms of, I just select whichever bike I own, and it shows me whatever is there in the catalog. And whenever in doubt, when I used to pick up the phone and call, I would get updates that would make sense. Stuff so the fuel filter that I bought, which is one of the things that I bought recently, which I got to know about only because somebody else went through a pretty bad experience because fuel got mixed with water or something and his bike got screwed. So shockingly, I think more people should. It's I think $1,700 or something like that, and it lasts you about 8, 10, 12 years. That is almost nothing when you look at your Netflix subscription and stuff. This is for the next 10 years. So the only inconvenience is you remove it. People might give you the death stare, because it takes a little more time
Fill the gas. Yeah.
to get a full tank. But then the people that give you a death stare hasn't paid for your bike or is not paying your EMI, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So
Or paying for the fuel.
yeah, exactly. So I think a lot more people should look at that. And the other part is, when we have interesting conversations or debates of anything bike related, or if we are in one of those philosophical this thing and we talk about what is the universe made of, stuff like that.
And
So
the last question would be any message that you want to give to upcoming riders. Obviously, Linda, you you want to give a message to all the women riders out there who want to get into biking, who want to try this hobby. And obviously, Leon, if you have some expert comments on falling less or more.
And it can be separate advice. It doesn't need to be
we don't
what
want
she
very
said.
what she said.
So you tell the people what they want to hear.
First of all, I would say that take out the gender out of riding. It is not about a woman or a male rider. Riding is just riding. You feel the bike. You know exactly where you want to go, or this is exactly you make sure that the moment that you see a bike, or this is the thing that you want to do, that's it. You're not going to be associated as a female rider or a male rider. You're just going to be seen as rider.
Yeah, but then see, this is.
I know. I know. I come from a place where
the universe is.
It's a far thought for us from where we are as a country right now, where we actually just say yes. It is a big thing to say female rider. I want to know. I want to see a place in our country where we do not see gender when riding or doing anything. Right? I'm not trying to sound feminist, although I do believe in feminism. But the whole point of feminism is to make sure that everybody is treated equal, right? So you don't need to bring in gender to your riding. So if you are a woman who's watching this, or a girl who's watching this, and you feel that this is I know this is what I want to do. I want to ride a bike. I want to feel how it feels like riding a bike. Reach out to the person that you have confidence on, so that you can consult. Start riding. It is not a big deal. It is not a big deal at all. It is just taking that first step to actually make an effort to learn what you are. You might not even decide that is your passion, but you just might want to know how to ride. It's fine. Try it. Do not hold back saying that I have nobody to teach me. You will find a way. You will somehow find a way. If you are so passionate about, or if you are so willing to learn something, you will find a way. So do not give an excuse to yourself saying that I don't have the resource. You don't need a 1000cc bike to ride.
Absolutely.
Say it's very simple. Wear gear. I know every YouTuber says that, what do they say? Wear gear, ride safe, and all of that. I think everybody knows this by now. And if you're buying a bike or riding a bike and you don't know about gears, gloves, boots, and helmets, you're living under a rock. I refuse to believe that even in the villages they don't know that, because everybody during COVID-19, the internet usage was high across the nation. Out of the idea, I may get divulging, but everybody has enough content, so they know this. The one thing that I would ask people to actively do, this is for all the riders, this weekend riders, breakfast riders, riding across the country, whatever. When you stop somewhere, you drink water, you have your biscuits or whatever, put that shit back into your bag. When you have a smoke, tub it out at the foot of your shoe, put it into a Ziploc or whatever, and please put it back in your bag, because technically speaking, it's lesser volumetric weight than, with all the stuff filled in it. So you can just crumple it, put it in the corner, and go to your hotel, your final destination, and drop it. Because today we went to the trail and we sat down there. We had homemade chicken burgers and stuff like that. All the guys who smoked, stubbed out their cigarettes on the foot of the sole of their shoe, and put it back into their Ziploc bags and brought it back to Bangalore to respective houses. So that is the only thing that I would say, because I think from a riding perspective, there is enough knowledge out there. But this, I don't know why people do it. And some of the most beautiful places is completely destroyed because of this. And then you will see articles of, really good bikers picking up stuff and cleaning stuff, like in Leh, I think that happened. Was it the Leh article? I had read something like that. When you read that and you commend the individual, it was brilliant stuff that he did. But it's unfortunate that he had to even be put in that scenario. And and to commend him for doing something that all of us should be doing in the first place. So that is the only thing that I would tell you.
I really had my doubts, but you actually did match up Linda's.
Yeah, you did. I think you put a very
That's one power couple we have.
yeah.
So anyway, Leon and Linda, it's been great talking to you guys. Although we did stretch it a little bit more than we were supposed to, but it was been great talking to you guys.
So before we let you go, Leon, I started when I started introducing you, I did mention that you have a YouTube channel. Would you want to tell us what the YouTube channel is called?
Bicodomic. All right, see. So the reality is, I've been recording for I think the last 5-6 years, but that was just for me on a. I think everybody started like that. I don't want to be a YouTuber. I want to be a pseudo YouTuber. You know, I just
want to upload it, but you don't want people to watch.
No, I just want to upload this stuff. And I just want to talk about my views. I know I'm defining a YouTuber here, but my views might be very different from what is shown. There are only very few YouTubers out there that I think speak the absolute truth. And Bulu Biker is one of the guys that I follow, because the person that you meet versus what you see on screen is absolutely the same. I'm not saying everybody's fake.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is a lot of stuff that's being said that I think is not true, and I don't know why people just don't do their research about products and stuff like that, right? So the only reason why I wanted to start was to put a little bit of my craziness into YouTube. Having said that, my YouTube channel, guys, is one of the most boring channels you can find. I'm nowhere this close to active. I'm scared of this guy. You see this, the mic. So whenever that thing's on, I'm not able to speak. I think I'll get over it. So coming back to your original question, Bikerdemic.
Bikerdemic.
No, I changed it to Bikerdemic.
Again, you changed.
That's the third time I've changed that name. I changed it thrice, and I've uploaded 3 videos.
No, I saw the one which you're riding through the Bangalore city without traffic during the
Lockdown, yeah.
during the
Yeah.
lockdown,
That was the first
and
video.
your commentary I think was done later. So
Yeah. The first 2 videos, my voiceover was later.
it's
So I was
very, very
little-
well done. I kind of like the thought process in that. So I'll watch the other ones and give you some feedback.
Sure. That would be super helpful, because
Leon, you actually became what you feared. You became a YouTuber.
yeah, you can't help it.
Sometimes in life you try so hard not to be something that you become it.
Yeah,
That's exactly
absolutely.
what happened.
Very well said. Yeah, absolutely.
painful.
Okay, the other question that I had before you go is, why do you like trees? As in, we all like trees, but why do you specifically say you like trees? And for everyone who's watching, his Instagram bio says, I like trees. So that's what I'm trying to understand. What does it mean?
We'll put 100 there for you guys to see.
Right. So I was Instagram picked up. Everybody was on Instagram. I wasn't on Instagram for work because of marketing and stuff. I needed to follow, what do you call those things? Pages.
Mhm.
Pages, right? Is that
Yep.
what it's called? A profile.
Profiles.
Yeah, pages, profiles, pages. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah, okay.
So she created it when we were sitting down in a cafe, my profile, and I think there are some 5-6 pictures, and I've not updated anything ever since. I don't even have the app, but I think I should put that app back and just keep uploading random pictures. And the I like trees bit, all of these guys asked me for a bio, and people started writing biker, and everybody was giving the inputs, and I was like, let's go with I like trees. And then I remember everybody, looking at me and saying that, okay, you should talk about football, like passion for bikes and stuff. I'd be like, everybody writes that stuff, but I like trees. Look at this tree. That's such a nice guy. No, and I genuinely like trees. I know that sounds really funny, but
I
whenever
try my best to stay serious. I'm sorry.
No. I completely understand that it is hilarious. But you know, when I think about that statement that just came out as a spur of the moment thing, I actually like trees. I get really upset when I see people like absolute morons cut down trees and then say, "Oh, boss, it's becoming hot." Of course, it's becoming hot.
Yeah.
You're cutting down the trees. What do you expect?
No, you're a nature's guy. You just mentioned that you should not litter in, some of those beautiful places. Take your stuff back.
Yeah.
I like trees comes from that. So I think your subconscious is telling you the right thing. You just need to phrase it right.
Right, definitely.
Leon will be the first one among us to go with the electric bike.
Yeah.
No. Oh, okay. So I love trees, man. I love the environment and all of that stuff. But I could have an electric bike, but that will not be my daily driver or any of that stuff. It'll just be
Maybe
because
more eco-friendly fuel.
no.
comes. If it-
Okay, maybe yeah.
if
Fuel I could do it, but if it is an electric bike,
Basically, I like trees, but I like internal combustion more.
Yeah.
Yeah. definitely.
I think
I think
that's going to be his T-shirt.
Yeah. I like trees.
I think that should be your Insta bio. I like trees, but I like internal combustion more.
Yeah, that actually sounds good. But then that could also mean that I'm suddenly against the environment that I want to protect. They'll be like, hey, this is a two-sided guy, split personality disorder and stuff like that. But yeah. So that's that.
Okay, so thank you so much for spending all this time with us, sharing your stories. It's been really great talking to you guys and catching up.